Welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here today. It's now noon, so we are going to start our webinar. I'm Jamie. I'm with Metro Council. So it's the Metropolitan Council Community Mental Health Centers. And we're so glad that you are here today. And just a little bit about Metro Council. We're a collaboration of membership organizations representing the public mental health system of community behavioral health centers that serve the whole Metro Kansas City area. And we provide support to other organizations and education, information, resources to the public about behavioral health. One thing I want to put on everybody's calendar, and hopefully all of you can save the date, is for our Mental Health KC conference. It'll be happening May 23rd through 24th at Johnson County Community College. So May 23rd, Thursday, it'll be from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. May 24th, Friday, it'll be from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And it'll be an incredible conference. I will tell you, we have 70 breakout sessions, over 100 presenters, 2 national keynote speakers, of course, contact hours, and lunch and snacks, and it'll be a fantastic conference. Andrea and I are both helping plan it. So definitely save the date. Registration should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And the other thing that we do is we have free webinars such as this. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about Andrea. Before I do that, just a couple quick little kind of housekeeping things. One is we use Zoom webinar. So what that means is you're able to see the presenter, you're able to see Andrea's presentation and Andrea, but you are not able to see yourself in Zoom webinar. You'll only be able to communicate through the chat box or the Q&A, but both of those are open for you to chat. And at the end of our time together, everybody will be getting a certificate of attendance with a contact hour, and that will come at the end of our session today. So you'll get a link along with a password. And I always have to say this, even though Andrea is with Metro Council, that little disclaimer, the views and opinions presented are those of the speaker and do not necessarily represent the opinions of Metro Council. So with that, I want to give you a little information about Andrea. So Andrea Dalton hold on, there it is. Okay. How to get your little bio. So after graduating from the UMKC Conservatory with a Master of Arts degree in music therapy, Andrea Dalton worked for nearly 12 years as a board-certified music therapist, primarily in inpatient mental health units, serving some of the most vulnerable adults and children in the Kansas City area. She took on the unique opportunity as a trauma-informed care consultant in 2016, building on her undying fascination with the way the brain works, a critical appreciation for research, her creative spirit, and a strong commitment to making the world a better place for all people. Andrea currently works at University Health in the Center for Trauma-Informed Innovation, developing trauma-informed, culturally responsive programs, practices, and policies in partnership with schools, healthcare providers, social service agencies, and organizations in the business sector across the country. She continued to serve the music therapy community as a faculty clinical supervisor for Roman Music Therapy Services in Wakefield, Massachusetts, and recently completed her term as vice president on the board of directors for the American Music Therapy Association. So with that, so excited to introduce Andrea, and that it's okay to not be okay.
Thanks, Jamie. And thanks everybody for joining me today for this special event. This is a bonus webinar this month. We really felt that it was important that we provide something in the wake of the community violence that we experienced a couple weeks ago in Kansas City. And one thing that I was thinking about a lot as we were talking about, what do we do? How do we respond? One thing that I am constantly reminded of is just how often and how many of these kinds of experiences we're having, not just in our communities, but also just individually. We are just piled on again and again and again, and it can become very exhausting. So that's one kind of acknowledgement. While I'm going to mention the event that happened 2 weeks ago in Kansas City a couple of times, there's also a lot of other events that I'm going to mention, or experiences that I'm going to mention. And I say this up front just to let you know that I am going to mention those things today, because that does have the potential to be activating for your own nervous system. I'm guessing that you're probably here today because you wanted to hear more about what do we do about trauma? How do we navigate these layers of overwhelm? So probably you're expecting that a little bit. And at the same time, sometimes things activate our stress response and we're not prepared for it. So take care of yourself, do what you need to do. I really also encourage you, if you're able to, like if you need to step out and then come back, that's obviously fine. This will be recorded. You can get to it later. And then if you can, if you're able to come back, I am going to teach you some things. Some of them won't be brand new to you. In fact, maybe a lot of this stuff will just be a nice reminder to you, but there will be some tips and tools, if you will, on how to navigate all of these layers of overwhelm and those immediate moments as well. So I'm going to put in the chat again my slides for those of you who are with me live today. You can get those slides. All right, and that went across there. So I want to start out by just, well, let me tell you what these are my objectives. Here they are. This is what I'm going to talk about today. Not only the current crisis in our community, the impact that has on our nervous systems, but all of these current crises that we're dealing with. I'm going to be really vulnerable and share some stuff that's going on in my own life right now too, that has definitely contributed to me. Like, I feel like I'm talking to myself a little bit today too. So just want you to know that we're all in this together, right? We are all navigating all of this together at the same time. And there are lots of things happening. So we'll talk about that, just what that looks like in our nervous system. And then how do we support well-being in the midst of these experiences, not just for ourselves, but also for those that we care about. I think our community, the people, our families, our friends, our colleagues, the people that we're in contact with a lot, I think we as a community, we owe it to each other, right? To check up on each other, to provide support, to really be there for each other. We can't just expect that everyone's going to be okay all on their own. This is really about how do we come together? We need people. We need connection. We're wired for that. And without that good quality kind of support, then, people do end up feeling very lonely and isolated, and that just contributes even more to our overwhelm. So going to pay attention to some of those things today. Before I get started into talking about, what's kind of going on and all of those layers of overwhelm, I want to just pause for a moment and do a quick check-in practice with you. So I'll lead you through this. Just a quick reminder that if you didn't already know this, I guess it won't be a reminder, that we actually are getting like a lot of information into our brains at any given moment. It's like billions of pieces of information. And a lot of that actually comes from inside our own bodies. So our brain is constantly taking in like the data on what's happening to us. And as our body sort of settles down, as we take that moment to just pause, that sends feedback up to our brain that like, I'm generally okay right now. I may not be like spectacular. I may not be sparkling and glowing, but I'm okay. And as we do those kind of regular activities of the day, eating, even like walking, going to the bathroom, laying down and just taking a deep breath at night as we settle down to go to bed. If we keep bringing awareness to the fact that I'm safe, I can still take a breath, the necessary things maybe are getting done, that is reassuring to our brains and to our nervous system. So take a moment once in a while throughout your day to take in that moment of like being okay, or notice when you're not okay. And I think that that's kind of the other side of this, is sometimes we just have to acknowledge, like, I'm not okay right now. So I'm going to invite you to take a deep breath and get as comfortable as you can wherever you are. If you're sitting, standing, whatever's most comfortable for you. You can close your eyes if you want to. Take another deep breath in, maybe the deepest breath you've taken in today. And then exhale slowly through your mouth. Notice that right now in this moment, you're feeling something. It may not be a lot, but it may be a whole lot. Just take note of it. You don't have to try to change that right now. Just acknowledge how you feel. And notice if there's any need that arises in your mind. Is there something that you're missing right now? Is there something that would relieve some of the tension or stress that you're feeling? And again, just acknowledge that. You don't have to do anything with it right this moment. Take another breath in and exhale. And as you're ready, you can open your eyes, release the practice. Okay, so I'm going to start with just a note about compassion. Compassion for yourself, compassion for others. So starting with asking, as you've noticed what's going on with you right now, maybe you've observed responses from other people around you recently, ask yourself, what has happened that is contributing to this response? What's going on? What happened before I started feeling this way? And then also ask, what need is unmet? And a lot of times we find that those needs are very, very basic needs. As humans, you know, we have a need for control. We definitely have a need for safety. I'm going to talk about that quite a bit this afternoon. We have needs for just, you know, our basic functions, food, being warm or not too warm, you know, being a comfortable temperature, thirst, you know, the sleep, all of those kinds of things are also needs. So pay attention to those. That'll come up again a little bit later today. All right. Few questions to think about. In the last 2 weeks, have you struggled to start a task? Even though it was on your to-do list, it was just hard to kind of get going on it? Have you struggled to remember details that you just heard? Have you had trouble figuring out what to do next? Just kind of like in limbo, not really sure. I don't know what to do. Have you had trouble focusing your attention, prioritizing your to-do list? What about being able to tolerate even small changes or stressors, or regulating your emotions? I know for me, I've had a lot of trouble with many of those things in the last few weeks. These are all executive functions, and those are primarily coordinated by your prefrontal lobes of your brain. Yeah, somebody said in the chat, been feeling really discombobulated. I think that's such a great word to describe that. Like, I just can't quite get my head like together, right? I just can't quite know even what words to say. I've been struggling with finding words. That's actually really normal because, well, it's normal, it's common in times of stress, because when you're chronically stressed, or when you're activated into your emotional or your survival state, like I have here on the slide, this part of your brain goes offline. We literally cannot engage in those executive functions until we are able to have a reduction in activity in those emotional and survival states. So the fight, flight, or freeze response, some of you might be familiar with that. That is the survival state. That's that lower part of the diagram here. It's the brain stem. And that's really just primarily concerned with safety, our physical safety. Now, it can also be activated if we feel psychologically unsafe. And that a lot of that initial activation happens in our emotional state, or the limbic system. So that's the middle part there. The emotional state, when it senses disconnection, disrespect, threats to our emotional safety, if we don't feel like we belong someplace, those kinds of things, that can activate our emotional state. And in many circumstances, it so strongly activates that it triggers our fight, flight, or freeze response. Because being psychologically unsafe is just as dangerous to our survival as physical safety. And our human brains don't seem to be able to be like highly activated in our survival and executive state as well as our survival and emotional state as well as our executive state at the same time. So what that means for us is that if we're in our stress response, we may not have the capacity to do that higher level processing that we need to make thoughtful decisions, to understand cause and effect, to work toward a goal, to do problem solving. We also may see that in other people. If somebody we know, somebody we see is in their stress response, they also do not have the capacity to do that higher level processing of the executive state. Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge somebody just dropped in the chat, feeling as though you've been trapped in a loop cycle between the survival and emotional state since March of 2020. Absolutely. So even though a lot of folks think, pandemic is over, it's not over, folks, right? We are still dealing with the effects of lockdown. We're dealing with many people are experiencing long COVID symptoms, I guess, and we still have COVID infection happening too. So there's still like a lot of that happening, and we will continue to deal with that for some time. So definitely want to acknowledge that, and that pops up actually in one of my slides here in a minute too. What I want to say about this before I move on from this diagram is that the way we soothe the emotional state is through the creation of connection. And the way we soothe the survival state is through the creation of safety. And those are two concepts that are really foundational to the practice of trauma-informed care, which is what my department works on, is how can we better equip people with practices in trauma-informed care. So creating safety and building connection are foundational. And in fact, if you walk away from this time today with nothing else, I hope that you will remember that. How can I create safety and how can I build connection? And just asking yourself those two questions as you navigate the day, both for yourself and for those that you're interacting with. I think that it really does help us kind of move in that direction of being more well together. So safety, I want to spend just another moment talking about, though, because feeling safe is not just like a static state of being. Safety is impacted by a lot of factors, including the environment, interpersonal relationships, our internal responses, our past experiences. All of those things can cause us to feel unsafe in the midst of all of those changing factors. So understanding that safety is not only a foundational need for our optimal well-being, but it's also something each of us can continually attend to for one another is really essential. We've, in my work, our center has worked a lot on like, what does it mean to be, what is safety? How do we define that? A lot of times you'll see like physical and psychological safety. I just mentioned those on the previous slide. And psychological safety actually encompasses a whole lot more than maybe just like emotions or, that sense of belonging. There are many, many other things that are parts of that. So we've developed this idea of the dimensions of safety based on SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, dimensions of wellness. Awareness of these different dimensions of safety can be really beneficial to us to kind of help us figure out like, what is the need that I have? What are some of those things that are going on that are causing me to feel like I am activated in that stress response? I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about these today, but just want to point out that there are all of these different elements of safety, and we probably don't pay a whole lot of attention to some of these on a regular basis until we do feel unsafe in them. So physical, environmental, emotional, spiritual, social, occupational, intellectual, financial, and moral safety are all essential pieces of what it means to feel safe. And not feeling safe in one of those dimensions means that we don't feel safe. Like it broadens to that whole experience of being in the stress response pretty quickly when we don't have one of these. Maybe I'll do a whole webinar on this one day because I could talk about that for a whole hour too, I think. So because we have all of these different dimensions of safety, and those dimensions of safety are often violated in different ways, we have the stress response. Some of you might be familiar with the adverse childhood experiences. Those are traumatic events that happen to us before the age of 18. You can see those popping up there in the tree on this slide. We also have adverse community experiences, the things that are in the soil of our communities that contribute sometimes to those adverse childhood experiences, but also impact us on a day-to-day basis in our communities. That includes violence, incidents of community violence, like what happened 2 weeks ago. It also includes things that are not only those kind of acute events, like an instance of community violence, but also the things that are more prolonged. Things like discrimination and poverty. Those are in the soil and definitely are influencing all of our stress levels at various levels. Depends on our level of exposure to each one of these, right? And then we also have, this is where we get to the layers, right? We have layers and layers of stuff happening. There are larger environmental issues. We've got climate events, natural disasters. I just saw on the news, there's wildfires right now in Texas that are really bad. People are, losing lots of belongings. There's been loss of life. This is happening like more and more frequently. I think we're under a fire watch right now here in the Kansas City metro because of the wind that's picked up, and it's been fairly dry. So that's problematic. You may have noticed the dramatic change in the weather this week, as it was like almost 80 the other day, and then it dropped the very next day to like 18 degrees. That's not typical, and that is disruptive to our functioning. And then, of course, the pandemic. Appreciate the nod to that in the chat before. That continues to be ongoing and very disruptive to our nervous systems, to our ability to feel safe and well. Again, your level of exposure to that might vary and might influence you in a different way. Then there's also racial and political tension. Okay, we're in an election year, right? So I feel like it's bad anyway, but then in an election year, it's even worse. So we've got all of that kind of happening politically. The racial tensions that have in many communities sort of been like bubbling under the surface for quite a while, started to really come out more during COVID, and particularly following the murder of George Floyd. So we've been having more and more of those kinds of conversations, and they haven't all been conversations, right? There's been a lot of violence related to that too. And a lot of it, when we start dividing, that is disconnection, right? So of course our nervous systems are fired up. Whenever we have that disconnection from others, the dividing, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of blame, there's a lot of judgment. All of that is activating for that limbic system, that emotional state in our brain. And then we also layer on things like losses and grief. It might be the loss of a sense of safety. I think people perhaps who were at the Chiefs rally 2 weeks ago may have a sense of a loss of safety as a result of being that close to a violent event. Certainly people who were injured have an even greater impact related to that. Even seeing it though on the news, on the television, even if you weren't there, that secondary impact is just as impactful as being there, because our brains don't really like discern the difference between I saw it on TV or I was there in real life. Where our brains like will really take over and can create scenarios in our minds that are just as realistic as the actual event. Grief also has been, I think, compounded in so many ways. Not just the pandemic. I mean, certainly that was happening before, but I think with the pandemic, there was a lot of compounded grief, and we had to just keep going. And I think that that's one of the things that I kind of want to resist a little bit today and this time together is at some point we just can't, we don't just keep going. We need to rest. We need to pause. We need to acknowledge and give space for that grief and those losses. I personally, in the last 2 weeks, not only did we have the event disruption at the shooting at the rally, but we also, in my personal life, lost a friend in a sudden death. There was an accident and she did not make it. And that was a lot. Her funeral was last week, and that's still impacting me. Then I also learned just 2 days ago, I believe, my friend, one of my best friends, her mother died. And then yesterday I learned that another friend had lost her husband. So we've got like all of this. This is just me. I know a lot of people. I don't know that many people, right? And to have that many losses in that short amount of time, it's a lot. I said to some folks yesterday, like I'm feeling kind of used up, right? Like I have been overwhelmed to the point that I have really struggled to get things done that just need to be done. No joke, I got a sink full of dishes right now. Because I just can't quite get, I can get through what needs to be done, but that's about it. So just want to acknowledge that there is a lot that we're all carrying. Thank you all for your kind words there in the chat. I appreciate that. And I know that I'm not alone. And I think that has been one thing that's helped me. And I'm going to talk about that today too. So what happens when we're exposed to all of these traumas or stressors is that we can have a wide range of experiences. We can have a wide range of responses or behaviors. These that are on the slide here are kind of common, frequent responses to traumatization or the trauma response. They're really driven by the nervous system response to the trauma. So our nervous system gets activated. And if we have kind of prolonged activation of our stress response, that's when we start to have the impacts like this on the screen. I'm not going to read all of these to you. I would encourage you, if you're interested in learning more about this particular slide, Laura Vandernoot Lipsky is the author of this, and she has this diagram both in her book, Trauma Stewardship, as well as The Age of Overwhelm. Both are excellent resources related to trauma exposure. A couple that I do want to point out, though, that I, again, personally have experienced, the inability to embrace complexity. So I've mentioned that a few times already. When we say and have the feeling that like, this is just too much, this is too hard, I can't do this, I can't finish this, I can't think through the steps that I need in order to get this done. Like that's what that looks like. The other one I want to point out is grandiosity. So we can, especially those of us who are in helping professions or we're helpers by nature, when stuff gets hard, we sort of swing into action, jump into action in a way that sometimes is not helpful. Sometimes it's helpful, right? Sometimes we need to do that. And sometimes we take on more responsibility than is necessary, and that can lead us to burnout. It can also give us a kind of a false sense of empowerment too. But you know that you might be in that response if you say something like, if I don't do it, no one will, or if I don't do it, no one will do it right. That might be a sign that you are experiencing that inflated sense of importance related to your work. Okay. Yes, and I'm just noting in the chat, definitely also want to acknowledge the loss of Lisa, who lost her life in that shooting 2 weeks ago. I think that she was very well connected. I know a couple people that were connected with her, and the impact of her loss is significant. So yes, thank you, Denise, for putting that in there, and definitely send a lot of warmth to her family and friends, because that any loss of life is too much, right? Okay, so I'm just going to really quickly share this, and then I'm going to move into like, what do we do? How do we navigate all of this? Um, when we have any kind of disaster or stressor, we have a pretty natural like initial response of heroism, especially when it happens in our communities. It's really natural to kind of get that like, we're going to take care of it. And I think we see that in our community right now. Lots of hashtag KC Strong stuff going around, which is great, actually. I mean, those are the things that help us bond together so that we can navigate. We absolutely need to do that. We learn how to adapt and survive during those times. And we kind of get in a groove. We get into a honeymoon period where, you know, as a community, we've come together and we're talking about how we're going to make things different and better, how we're going to take care of each other. You know, we're sharing resources, we're sharing information. A lot of folks might feel really confident in like being able to address those things. And at the same time, we've got other folks who maybe don't feel as connected. We've got people who feel like people don't really understand what they're going through. And then those who have kind of sprung into action, the ones who are the rescuers, might suddenly feel like they've run out of steam. And I think we see that sort of as a community too. Like we can get to a point where we kind of run out of steam. We get to a point of disillusionment. Some of us get there more quickly than others because we're already burnt out, but before everyone else. But when we get to that point, like our minds and our bodies like kind of push back. And we might have had, you know, maybe a reasonably positive attitude that we're going to get through this together. But we might get to a point where we're just fed up. You know, nothing's changing. Policies haven't changed. Why is this stuff continuing to happen? You know, why don't we, whatever, fill in the blank. When those expectations around things changing doesn't happen, that's when we get to that point of disillusionment. And I think we see that again and again with community violence in particular. And so I share this just to say, like, that's actually pretty normal that we would have that moment of disillusionment. We have probably had a range of emotions and responses, and we're facing these really tough conditions with like courage and resilience, and we're doing it, right? And some of us have maybe already hit the wall, or we're about to hit the wall. And so when we hit a wall, it can feel really demoralizing to us personally. It can also be really difficult for the community then to kind of keep on going and be able to advocate for the changes that we need or that we want. So I want to talk about hitting the wall. The wall can pop up at different times for different people. It often happens multiple times. You may have hit a wall with COVID. I know I hit a wall more than one time with COVID. Definitely have hit a wall. It was yesterday for me when I hit the wall, and I was like, I'm done. I'm used up. And you may have noticed too, and I've heard a lot of people say this, felt this myself, just how exhausted I have felt for the last couple of weeks. That's actually normal to be exhausted. It's normal. Your brain, your nervous system, your body is taking in a lot of information, trying to process it all, trying to determine if you're still safe. Are you safe? That's what your brain is constantly asking. And that takes a lot of energy. It doesn't mean that you're lost. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It just means you're tired. So what do we do about this? How can we be well anyway in the midst of stress, trauma, loss, grief? My first tip is don't push through. Remember that I love this GIF, the guy pushing on the wall. This is what I feel like a lot of times. Don't push through though. Remember, it's not productive to try to just keep on going. Especially because when we do that, we kind of start to beat ourselves up for struggling. Like we feel bad that we're not getting better faster. And that actually lengthens the amount of time that it takes to make it through. It's more effective to kind of be kind to ourselves and like ride it out. So some helpful practices to that are like checking in with yourself, like I had you do at the beginning, and self-compassion. So I'm going to talk about self-compassion for a moment. Self-compassion starts when we accept what we're feeling. We accept that that's real, that that's valid, that pain is real. that we're not dismissing it. We're accepting like this is what it is. And we choose to be loving and gentle with ourselves. So the way we do that in a practice is first just start with tuning into your emotions, name or describe what you're feeling, not just your emotions, like, you know, using emotion words, but check in with your body too. Like, what's your body telling you about how you feel right now? I notice my shoulders are super tight right now. Like, that's telling me a lot. Have you had digestive issues? Have you have you felt like you just need to move, or have you felt like you can't move? Like, all of that information that your body gives you is really important. And then acknowledge that you're human. This is a piece of the practice called common humanity. Acknowledge that you are a human being, and because you are a human being, you have a range of emotions, and what you're feeling right now is happening because you're human. And that's actually one piece that helps us connect with other people too. Like, that can help kind of be the antidote to the disconnection, is remembering that we are all human, and I'm not the only one who's experiencing this. We have 121 people on this webinar today. So there are 121 of us at least, right? That have come together, that are probably all feeling something similar. You know, there's a range in there, but they're all human emotions. And that's a really important piece of practicing self-compassion. The crucial last piece of it is staying curious, identifying what you need, and treating yourself with kindness in that. Don't shame yourself when you realize that what you really need is to maybe not go to that event that you said you were going to be at. That's okay. You got to take time for yourself to rest, or, you know, whatever it is that you're going to do in that time. So self-compassion really requires us to tune in, become aware of what we're feeling, connect with others, even just mentally, reminding ourselves that we're connected, and then being kind to ourselves as we meet those needs. So be mindful of when you get to hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or stressed. Some of you probably have heard this one before. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, stressed. Those are the things that oftentimes like result in some behavior that maybe we are not thrilled with ourselves later on. When we realize that we've overreacted. I have two young kids, they're 10 and 12. Occasionally I may get a little snippy with them, right? Maybe more than occasionally. But especially if I get hungry or stressed in some way, I am more likely for that to happen. So check in with yourself regularly. Notice those basic needs. Are those basic needs met? And if they're not, all activity halts. You see how this acronym works? All activity halts until you can engage in some self-care, until you can get that need met. Once we're aware of how we're feeling, we can identify and actually do the self-care that we need. And starting with a basic need helps us re-regulate to a point that we can access our executive functions again, which in turn helps us maintain our integrity, can help us feel better, and can help us all move forward. We can also be practicing compassion for others, for those around us. And I think this is really important because while we may be more forgiving to ourselves when we have one of those halts, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, stressed, we maybe are not as generous to other people, especially when we get stressed. It's so hard to be generous to other people when we get stressed. So make it a point to practice compassion for others too. And actually, when we practice self-compassion, it gives us more capacity to be compassionate to others. And it basically uses the same 3 steps. That's what I'm going to give you today. Start with tuning into emotions. What's going on with this other person? Don't judge them. Stay out of judgment. Resist judgment. Just try to ask, ask to yourself, I wonder what's going on here. Ask those questions that I had at the beginning. What's happened that's contributing to this response? And what need is unmet? That's actually the third part. So the second piece, acknowledge that everyone in this situation is human with a range of human emotions. And then stay curious, identify what the need is, and treat yourself and others with kindness. One tip that I'll give that I have found to be so effective is offering choices of what you can do instead of open-ended offers of support. I think especially I'm thinking of people who have close to me who have lost loved ones very recently. To reach out and say, let me know if there's anything I can do, that can be really overwhelming to that person, and they're probably not going to reach out to tell you what they need. However, if instead we can offer some choices about what we're willing and able to do to help, that can be much more effective. So, can I drop off a meal? Do you need somebody to come clean your bathrooms? Do you want to go get coffee? Just offer like a few choices. And even if they decline, that might get them thinking about, what do I need? And maybe then you can help to meet those needs. Also remember that the highs and lows are normal. Acknowledge the low moments, acknowledge those activations of your stress response. Sometimes we call those triggers. We're starting to get away from that lingo, but I wanted to put that in there because I know a lot of people use that. Acknowledge when it happens. Acknowledge when you don't feel good. Take that moment to check in. That's real. That is the start of self-compassion. And then also look for the joys. I've heard people call those glimmers lately. Look for those glimmers. And I think most importantly, resist the guilt or shame that can creep in when you are having a good time in the midst of a tragedy or a trauma. I think it's an unfortunate reality for human beings that when things are going bad around us, we feel bad if we find something good in the midst of it. But the truth is, life is always like that, right? Life always has good and not good happening at the same time. Yeah, survivor guilt. Somebody had that in the chat. Apologies, I got a little tickle in my throat. So be gentle with yourself. And know that you're not doing anything wrong if you find something to celebrate in the midst of tragedy or trauma. Okay. This was a late addition to my slide deck. I just saw this. I'd seen it before, but I saw it again yesterday on social media. And I thought, oh, this is so good. And I love this idea. Do anything that isn't nothing. And this is a little hard to read, so I'll tell you what the person said. The poster originally said, they were talking about knitting, of all things, right? I'm sure there are probably some knitters here. I know my sister's here today in the webinar, and she's a knitter. So I know she'll especially appreciate this. The thing about knitting is it's much harder to fear the existential futility of all your actions while you're doing it. Like, okay, sure, sometimes it's hard to believe you've made any positive impact on the world, but it's pretty easy to believe you made a sock. Look at it. There it is. Put it on. Now your foot's warm. And then it ends with checkmate nihilism. And then somebody actually commented, adding on to this social media post, that there have been studies done on rats and dogs where they develop learned helplessness in the animals by giving them impossible tasks. Eventually, those animals stop trying, even when the task stops being impossible. So they like put a rat in a maze with cheese, and it can't get to the cheese. But once it's developed learned helplessness, then they put the cheese somewhere it can get to, and the rat won't even try. It won't even try to get there, even though they could. It's right there. Couldn't get to it. But once they show those animals that they can do something, like they physically move the rat to the cheese, the learned helplessness goes away. Isn't that remarkable? So humans, maybe we're a little more complex, but we still kind of operate the same way. And no one can move you to your cheese for you. This example comes from the book Burnout by Emily and Amelia Nagoski, which is a great text. They say that doing something, which they define as anything that isn't nothing, that can help. So make some food, work in the garden, clean a thing, do a favor for a friend, Call your elected officials, knit a sock. If you feel overwhelmed by that despair, do something. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be anything that isn't nothing. One caveat to that though, don't try to do everything. Just do one thing. Don't try to do everything. And remember that self-care is not just the activities you do. Sometimes it's not doing something. Sometimes it's saying like, I can't do that right now. I need to rest, or I need to go outside and be in nature for a moment. Remember that if you can meet your obligations squarely and be kind to your loved ones, that's enough. And Brene Brown has a great quote: no matter how much I get done or is left undone, at the end of the day, I am enough. Now is not the time for perfectionism. Remember that you don't have to do everything. Remember that you are a human being, not a human doing. So look at what boundaries you might need in order to have time for what's essential. I think the essentials are often eat, move, rest, and connect. If you can do those 4 things, eat, connect. I said them in a different order. Let me do it again. Eat, move, connect, and rest. I can't remember what order I did it in. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't have to be in a particular order. Go back to those 4 essentials. And then remember that the same thing is true for others. So giving others grace when they put up a boundary and say, I can't do that. I'm out of steam. I cannot, can we reschedule our whatever? Give people some grace. I think grace is one of the best gifts that we can give others during times of stress, and ties right in with what I talked about with compassion a moment ago. Another thing, just to expand a little bit more on, is the idea of rest. So I've mentioned rest a few times today, and rest is, I think, a really important thing to consider, especially when we're stressed. When we're stressed, it takes a lot of energy and we need rest. The thing is, you might be getting enough sleep, like enough, they say is like 7 to 9 hours a night, but we're still waking up exhausted. I know this is happening for me. I'm getting plenty of sleep, but I am waking up exhausted. So you might need another type of rest. Dr. Andrea Dalton Smith, no relation to me, has a TED Talk and lots of other resources on the 7 types of rest. And I'm actually going to drop in the chat a handout. It has lots of things in it, but the second page of it is 7 types of rest. So there's some little descriptions. There's some other things you can do to engage with those 7 types of rest. What type of rest you need the most depends on what you're spending a lot of time doing, how you've been feeling about it. And a lot of them don't have to take a long time. Some of them have benefits in just a few minutes. So I'm going to talk about these just really quickly. The first one is physical rest. So physical rest is not only the passive kinds of physical rest, which is like actual sleep. Look at that little kitty. Looks so cozy. But also active physical rest. So those are the things that we do that help restore our body, to decrease muscle tension, reduce headaches, and actually promote higher quality sleep. So going for a walk, doing some yoga, gentle yoga, or stretching, doing something that like relaxes your muscles in some way. Maybe it's getting a massage, anything like that engages your body in a way that is restorative. That is another type of rest to consider. There's also mental rest. Our brains are taxed, right? So unplug as much as possible, kind of quiet down our brains, focus on the things that matter. The way to do that is to try to put stuff aside. Momentarily, I'm laughing because my brain is always going a mile a minute. That's way easier said than done. But do something like, make yourself get up and move away from whatever task you were doing every couple of hours at least. Move your body in that time. Take a little walk, free your mind. Try not to be thinking too hard during that. So practicing mindfulness or meditation is a really great way to get some mental rest. Really try to not just occupy your mind with something else like watching TV, because that's actually hard work for your brain to do that, or scrolling on your phone. But doing something like coloring or listening or singing along with music, those are things that also can give you some mental rest. Then there's also sensory rest. We are constantly bombarded with all kinds of sensory stimuli. I spend a great deal of time looking at my computer screen during the day. And then I look at another screen at the end of the day. And then I look at another screen, like lots of screens. We also have, depending on like where you work, you might have fluorescent lighting. You might have noise, like background noise. One of the buildings I work in sometimes has just this constant air noise. All of that sensory input, fragrances, all of that kind of stuff can be a lot. So because you get overwhelmed by that and you may not even notice, take a few minutes, a few moments even, to just like put your phone away, turn the lights off if you can, close your eyes, and just be quiet for a moment. And that little bit, I mean, really just like a minute, is very restorative for your brain. Now, if you're really up to it, unplug for a week or something. That can be really hard to do, but probably really great for your brain. Spiritual rest is another type of rest, and this is about feeling deep meaning and contentment in connection with things bigger than yourself. So it's really about like, how do I exist in this bigger interconnected web of existence? So connecting with a higher power, if that's something that is restorative to you. Even doing things like giving yourself forgiveness or acceptance. Connecting with other people in service to something greater than yourself. Get connected with nature. I think that that's often a time where I find a lot of spiritual rest, is just going outside and like I experience a lot of wonder and awe anytime I see the stars, or just watching like nature happen around me. I find that to be very fascinating. And that gives me a little bit of spiritual rest too. I engage in prayer sometimes during that time. Those kinds of things are ways that kind of help reconnect with the idea that it's not just me. Like there's a whole lot more to life than just the moment that I'm experiencing right now. And then social rest is another type of rest. And this is really about recognizing that some relationships revive us and some relationships exhaust us. And how can we kind of strike a balance in that? Also thinking about like, when do you need time for yourself? And when do you need to be with others? And being very intentional about how you seek that out when you need it. Give yourself the opportunity to say no. I'm not going to go to that event this weekend because I just need some time for myself. Or if you've had a lot of time to yourself and you're like, I just need to be around people, you call a friend, call a couple friends, call some people, and try to arrange something just to get together. Even if you just I'm going to combine types of rest here. You can get together and go for a walk, and you can experience several types of rest all at the same time. I think be cautious with social rest. Many of us have started using, I think especially the pandemic did this to us because we were trying to stay away from other people. We used a lot of social media, a lot of technology to be connected to others, which helps us be connected to people who are physically far away from us. But being on our phones, being on our devices a lot, and those social network apps can be really addictive and exhausting for our nervous systems, for our brains. So, choose times of the day when you're going to do that and put a limit to it. Another type of rest is emotional rest. This is about being able to authentically and respectfully express your feelings and eliminate people-pleasing behaviors. So it's really about working internally on self-awareness, getting to know yourself better, tuning in to what's going on in your brain and your body. And from that information that you learn about yourself, you're better able then to focus on, building and strengthening who you are, what you want to be, what do you want to bring into the world. A piece of emotional rest too is about saying no. Give yourself space to make decisions. try to evaluate how it really will impact you. Don't say yes just because the person you really like asked you to do this one thing. I think another really important piece of emotional rest is grief, giving space for grieving. Give yourself time, give yourself space. Recognize that grief is not like a one and done kind of an experience. Grief extends for a long time. And sometimes we need to give ourselves grace and just a little more time. And that's okay. Let go of the idea that you have to be resolved from something in a certain amount of time. It's going to be different for every one of us. So, think a little bit about those losses or changes that you've experienced. Make a plan to allow yourself time to grieve in whatever way that seems best for you. And then finally, the last type of rest is creative rest. And that is the experience of allowing beauty to inspire awe and liberate wonder. So just meander. Go outside and take a walk, and don't have I'm going to walk 3 miles and I'm going to take this route. Just go. Just walk around. Don't bring your phone. Turn on some music, sing and dance in the kitchen. You might want to sit and read a book, maybe. Do something different than you've been doing. Watch something that's inspiring to you. Call someone and talk about a big idea. Those kinds of things are parts of creative rest also. One thing, and I love this picture of this like dancing sheep. I saw a few years ago now a social media post where the person who was writing the post said that they had been talking about how busy their day was, how much they had to do, how much was on their to-do list, and their little daughter from the back seat said, "Don't forget to get weird and take some dance breaks." So I encourage you all to get weird and take some dance breaks today. And I think that will change your perspective. Even just thinking about it right now for me is kind of giving me a little bit more energy around that. So get weird, take some dance breaks. Don't underestimate the power of weirdness. Okay, and then one more little resource I want to give you, and I'm going to put it in the chat. There's the idea of tracking wonder. So I'm going to give you Wonder Bingo. Now, no pressure. You don't have to do this, but if you like it, feel free to take it and run with it. You don't have to complete it in any set amount of time. It doesn't really matter. But getting outside, finding things that are curious to you, learn a new idea, and then just notice wonder, notice awe. And the book that I read was called Tracking Wonder, which is where I got this idea from. But the idea that even just noting when we've had those experiences is very empowering to us and helps us keep finding those glimmers in our life. It also helps us access things like hope. And I was talking about the fact that I was going to do this webinar today with the group yesterday in my part-time job doing music therapy, clinical supervision. And in that group, I was also sharing with them just everything that has, to me, felt like it's just piled up in the last few weeks. So much stress in the last few weeks, so much loss. And in this conversation, one of my colleagues, Dan, said this quote, and I was like, I'm totally quoting you because I thought this was so great. No amount of hope is too tiny. No amount of hope is too tiny. And I just love that. So I hope that you take that with you today. Just a couple other little things that I'll share because I know we're about at time. Please, if you are in crisis, call or text 988. People are there to help you. We need you. We need what you bring to the world. So don't hesitate to reach out for help. We also have the Mental Health America of the Heartland Compassionate Ear warm line, and you can see the phone number there, 913-281-2251. Please give them a call, talk with people who are there to listen. And my department also houses a virtual room of refuge. There's a lot of different resources there for building resilience. You can take a look at that, and you're welcome to share that. The link is in the handout, so you can get to that later. And then feel free to reach out to me too. It's been great to spend this time with you today. Be well, everyone. Take good care of yourselves. Connect with others. Give support, and take support. Take the support that you need from the people who are able and willing to give it to you. So thank you all so much.
Andrea, thank you so very, very much. I think this webinar just was what we needed. So thank you. So important for all the different areas of rest, for us to really take some time to heal ourselves, not just from the events, from the Super Bowl parade, but just as somebody had said earlier, from everything that we've been experiencing the last few years. And even without the pandemic, all the things that we experience. In terms of certificate of attendance, it should be in the chat. I'm gonna put it up there again. So that way, in case you need it. Okay, so that attendance should be open. If you've never seen the virtual room of refuge, I highly recommend. And then Andrea, I know we had a couple questions. One person said, "What is Daniel's last name?"
Oh, Delucia, I think is how he pronounces it.
Okay,
Delucia.
thank you. And then, accessing the slides, they should also be in the chat as well.
I just put it in there one more time.
There we go. And then last one was they were asking about like, how do you have any suggestions for therapists?
I think my best suggestion is to call your local mental health center. So it may depend on where you live, what the best one is to call. If you want a list of those, I believe they're on the Metro Council website, aren't they, Jamie?
They
Go to
are.
mentalhealthkc.org.
Yes. So all of our community mental health centers in the metro are there. There's also a great resource. And I don't get paid by them or anything, but just I found it helpful. For friends and family, there's a website called Psychology Today. And you can find therapists through that site. The nice thing is you can filter with like insurance, gender, area of focus. You can kind of take a look and see who's accepting new clients. And it's nice because you see a picture of the individual, you see a little bit about their philosophy, and kind of what they focus on. It's a nice way to kind of filter out and see who might best fit your needs. Slides will also be available on our website very early next week, so along with this webinar. Okay. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.
Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you all so much. And we hope to see you back in a couple of weeks for our next webinar. Monica, we won't be sending a link, but it will be on our website, mentalhealthkc.org. Okay, everyone, have a great day. Bye.